Who's your commander?
Good luck.
Equip.
Move to combat.
Resolves.
Now, before you attack
Does
me,
anyone have an answer?
well played.
Good game.
Hello Rogues, today I've brought you another Dominaria deck tech, this one featuring Tetsuko Umezawa Fugitive. Tetsuko Umezawa Fugitive is 1 and a blue for a 1/3 legendary human rogue. Creatures you control with power or toughness 1 or less can't be blocked. Tetsuko is a solid inclusion in Dominaria. I was a big fan of her great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather Tetsuo Umezawa. Oh, such a classic card. But let's focus on what Tetsuko can do for us. In this deck, we have to focus on Tetsuko's ability to grant evasion, not only to herself, but to many other tiny, insignificant creatures that can't possibly do enough damage to take out a commander player. Okay, we'll readdress that later. But we also notice that Tetsuko is a rogue, and I know that there's some cool rogue strategies out there. Not like rogue different strategies, but ones literally with rogues. And also, a lot of these rogue strategies have whenever a creature deals combat damage to a player, blank. And I've seen some great versions of this, and with the evasion Tetsuko gives, I think that we can take advantage of some of those mechanics. And, well, actually, I did mention rogue strategies, because I'm going to talk about a few rogue strategies. Moving on to first talking about a little dabbling in the tribe of rogue, and this kind of gives us the theme of the deck. Let's look at a single card, Latchkey Fairy, 4 and a blue for a 3/1 flyer. That is not a rate I'm interested in paying. When Latchkey Fairy enters the battlefield, if its prowl cost was paid, draw a card. What? Okay, let's look at this prowl. Prowl is 2 and a blue. You may cast this for its prowl cost if you dealt damage to a player this turn with a fairy or rogue. Aha! Tetsuko Umezawa is a rogue, and she is very likely to deal damage because she's unblockable. So prowling this out will be super easy, and then when we get this fairy out, the fairy will be unblockable too. And it's a fairy rogue, so I guess I could prowl something in off of the Latchkey Fairy. Now, before we get all excited about this synergy, I don't know if I'm excited about the power level of just 3 evasive damage every turn, even if it only costs 3 mana, even if it gets us a card. So I wonder what other prowl payoffs we can look forward to. Oh, and there are a few good ones. Knowledge Exploitation, 7 mana! Don't look at that, let's look at the prowl cost. 4 mana, 3 and a blue. That's reasonable. Search target opponent's library for an instant or sorcery card. You may play that card without paying its mana cost. Oh my gosh, Knowledge Exploitation is worth 7 mana, and just imagine if we can cast it for 4. There are some stupid spells in Commander, and the ability to play your opponent's biggest bomb as early as turn 4? Amazing. And we only get better from here. Notorious Throng. 4 mana, but again, Prowl. Wow, the Prowl cost is more. 5 and a blue, 6 mana. Put X 1/1 black fairy rogue creature tokens with flying into play, where X is the damage dealt to your opponents this turn. Well, again, that sounds pretty good. We're going to get a ton of 1/1s. These 1/1s will also be evasive. I have a feeling that we're going to be having a lot of evasive damage going through, so we could get, 5, 6 fairies for 4 mana or Prowl. But let's keep going. If Notorious Throng's Prowl cost was paid, take an extra turn after this one. So not only do we get to deal a bunch of damage and double up our ability to get evasive creatures, we then get an extra turn to swing in with them. Oh, this is a card that only really fits in a deck that can reliably prowl it into play. This sounds great. I want to mention one last card that has rogue synergies, and that's Cloak and Dagger. A 2 mana equipment, actually it's a special thing, it's a tribal artifact, rogue equipment, love that flavor, and equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has Shroud. Whenever a rogue creature comes into play, you may attach Cloak and Dagger to it. So we don't have to worry about that 3 mana equip cost if we play the Cloak and Dagger and then Tetsuko Umezawa. But as soon as Cloak and Dagger is equipped to Tetsuko, she's no longer unblockable. Her power is 3 and her toughness is 3. None of that is small enough to get through. but I think that the Shroud is very worthwhile, and that's why I'm willing to play this equipment. And not to mention, it could always be equipped to other creatures like the Latchkey Fairy I mentioned. It's a rogue as well, and then suddenly we have a 5/1 unblockable with Tetsuko on the battlefield. That's something I'm really excited about. And we can see the power of equipments augmenting these creatures. We take dorky little 1-powered or 1-toughness creatures and suddenly make them incredibly relevant. So let's talk about a few pieces of equipment. First up, we have Umezawa's Jite. The legendary artifact itself, it needs to be in this deck, obviously, with an Umezawa at the helm, but actually the Jite is much better than you would think. We know this deck will have a lot of evasive creatures, getting damage in, building up charge counters on the Jite, and also, the Jite can be activated at any time, so we can gain life, we can kill some of their creatures, or after no blocks are declared, because no blocks can be declared in most of this deck, we can then pump up our creature by removing charge counters, making them super, super powerful and still remain unblocked. Before I go deeper into more equipment, I want to mention Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots. It's just like that Cloak and Dagger. I really think we need to protect our commander, because one thing that would suck is if we swing in with a bunch of creatures that we think are unblockable, our commander eats a piece of removal, and suddenly all of our tiny creatures are easily blocked, and they've board wiped us with a single piece of targeted removal. Okay, but we can avoid that with cards like Lightning Greave, Swiftfoot Boots, even Siren Storm Tamer. The ability to make sure we are not surprised by combat is going to be really great. All right, that was the boring part. Let's move on to much more exciting pieces of equipment, like Fire Shrieker. I usually don't like Fire Shrieker. I think its equip cost is really high, but in this deck it's going to be great, because every single time we do double strike damage, we're building more counters, we're getting more of those, quote, when damage is dealt to an opponent, end quote, triggers. Like, for example, I don't know, this Bloodforged Battle Axe. A perfect card in this deck, especially if we can put it on one of the 1-toughness creatures, because it only pumps the power. And so if we just keep attacking, we get more and more of these Bloodforged Battle Axes, and if we have Fire Shrieker, then we get even more Bloodforged Battle Axes. I love the idea of the deals combat damage to a player, you get something, and so that's going to be a theme of this deck. Just like this next card, whenever you deal combat damage to a player, they lose half their life. Yes, and just imagine this with Fire Shrieker. They don't die completely, they just basically die. I love how we have such powerful pieces of equipment, all of them on super evasive creatures. Well, the key is to keep having creatures. Don't be stuck without a creature to equip these great pieces of equipment onto. And that's why I like Captain's Claws. It pumps only the power and it puts another 1/1 onto the battlefield. So after a few turns, suddenly we have a really menacing army. And it's not just equipment that can go on creatures, making them super dangerous. I love the Cipher mechanic. Stolen Identity is 4 blue for a sorcery that lets you put a token of target artifact or creature onto the battlefield under your control. But then it has this cipher, which means that you kind of encode this spell onto a creature. It's really weird mechanic, but that means every time that creature deals combat damage to a player, there's that phrase again. You get to cast that sorcery again. So with a Stolen Identity on an evasive creature, you just get to keep casting it every single time it deals combat damage, which is going to be all the time. Just building out your board. It doesn't even have to be your own creatures. It could be someone else's stupid huge creature that you don't care if it gets evasion or not because it's so big and powerful. Oh, this deck, man. There are other Cipher cards, Hidden Strings, Hands of Binding, Voidwalk. Okay, I don't know if I'm really into the other Cipher cards. They can do some cool shenanigans. I'm super excited about Stolen Identity. Next, we got a little card draw. Mask of Memory is very underplayed. You should try it out in decks that need a draw. And Curiosity. Curiosity might be a little bit underwhelming because I think we have plenty of draw effects in this deck. Wait a second, I've talked about all of these great pieces of equipment that go on to creatures, but I haven't even mentioned the creatures yet. Spoiler, a lot of these are going to be either 1 power or 1 toughness. Or both. Okay, first up, I think we're just going for some plain old power. Eldrazi Skyspawner, True Name Nemesis. They both have 1 toughness, making them pretty good attackers, and True Name Nemesis has that protection that's pretty cool, although it might not be worth the price tag just to fit into this deck. There are a few other cards that are really good at attacking, but also have some interaction with our opponents. Vendilion Click, Phyrexian Revoker, and Nimble Obstructionist. All of these attack really well, unblockably with our commander, and have a little bit of play to it. Vendilion Click, interrupting an opponent's hand, or cycling a card for yourself that you don't need. Phyrexian Revoker, shutting off Planeswalkers, other crazy stuff, and Nimble Obstructionist a lot of times is just going to be a beater, but sometimes you really do need to counter that activated or triggered ability. Moving up in power, we have Illusory Ambusher. 5 mana for a 4/1 cat illusion with flash, and whenever it is dealt damage, draw that many cards. So it's a great blocker, it's got flash, and it does so much damage, and it's a kitty cat. This is just a great card. Another 4/1 creature is Frostwalker. I think if you wanted to go very aggressive, this 2-drop that deals 4 damage would be really good. But in this deck, we do really like equipment. We are running quite a few of them, and a creature that can't hold a sword is not something I'm interested in, so pass. I think we can get even more damage in. Oval Chase Dragster. An uncommon out of Kaladesh. This 4-mana artifact is a 6/1. Oh my gosh, it's so good. It's got trample too, but nothing's gonna block it. You don't need to trample over. You just haste this vehicle in, and you can easily crew it with all of your 1 power creatures. We're just gonna 6/6/6/6 them. Oh, I love it. And if we get lucky, we can do even more damage with Mind Shrieker. This crazy spirit bird is just a little 1/1 flyer, but for 2 mana, you could pump this up to be crazy big. And this is almost like the GT. Your opponents have to say no blocks, and then you can start pumping up the power and toughness. Don't do this before blocks. And for even more damage getting through Master of Waves, it's unblockable, and all of the elementals it creates is unblockable. Oh my gosh. Just a few more tricky cards. We have Riptide Entrancer. You can steal a creature with it once you deal combat damage, but I don't think I want to steal a creature. I think I'd rather just control your board with cards like Mistblade Shinobi. This ninja, loving the ninja sub-theme that we have in here as well, rogues and ninjas, great. But whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may return target creature that player controls to its owner's hand. So you're just dealing damage and bouncing every single time. And we can lean into this strategy a little heavier with a card like Sigil of Sleep going on any of our evasive creatures, and Arm with Ether. Again, it's a one-time effect, so this might not be something you're super excited about, but this could act like a one-sided board wipe, as you play this and then suddenly attack with a bunch of creatures, and then pick and choose exactly what you're going to bounce back to your opponent's hand, buying you tons of time and tons of tempo. But I mean, if I'm discussing bouncing things, I gotta talk about the king of bounce, Cephalid Constable. 1 blue for a 1/1. Whenever Cephalid Constable deals combat damage to a player, return up to that many target permanents that player controls to their owner's hands. Some of the great things about this. It returns as many permanents as damage dealt. So that means if we pump this creature's power somehow, I don't know, maybe with the 6 pieces of equipment we have in here, then we get through evasively because of the 1 toughness that will inevitably be on this creature and our commander on the battlefield, and then suddenly our opponents are facing down bouncity bounce, bounce, bounce. And do you know what? If you don't have any creatures, no problem. We'll bounce an artifact. We'll bounce your lands. We'll bounce that bounce land. Can this deck get any better? Well, I would also like it a lot if, after I bounce all your cards back to your hand, I also have a Riptide Pilferer. 2 mana for a 1/1 rogue, and when it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card. we're just gonna keep hitting him with this crazy rogue specter, just ripping through our opponent's hand. I want to mention one more thing before we move on. This deck really revolves around our ability for our creatures to be evasive, unblockable. And our commander fits right into that strategy, and being able to cast it for 2 mana means that we can have some reliability from our commander. But we're going to want to double up that reliability, triple it up, with cards like Rogue's Passage and Thassa, God of the Sea. Hopefully we never have to use these cards, but if you ever do, you'll be thanking me. We've talked about some of the deals damage to a player payoffs from these creatures, but there's another one that I'm super excited about, and that's drawing cards. Lots and lots of cards. Sadly, this is not an Edric deck. I know we really want it to be, and we're going to do our best to make a good impression of Edric, but we're not going to be able to be quite as low to the ground, and we're not going to reliably draw that many cards. I am going to try my best with cards like Bident of Thassa, Coastal Piracy, and Deep Fathom Skulker. We're going to have tons of evasion, so I want to be able to churn through my deck with crazy amounts of card draw. I also might want to deploy some card draw that slows my opponent down. Rhystic Study is something that works really well in this deck. I mean, it's great in a lot of decks, but when I have a lot of low mana cost creatures, I do want to tax my opponent and refill my hand really well. We need to pay attention to card draw in this deck. I also like the ability of taxing my opponent with other enchantments. Frozen Ether might be a good fit in this deck, slowing them down and allowing us to deploy these smaller creatures that can gain us value when they deal damage. There are also a lot of great creatures that draw us cards when they connect. Nurok Commando, Tandem Lookout, Eternal of Harsh Truths. These are a perfect fit for our strategy. And one of my favorite cards that draws cards, Surakar Spellblade. Let me read this gem of a card for you. 1 blue for a 2/1 Surakar. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may put a charge counter on this creature. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may draw X cards, where X is the number of charge counters on it. So this super evasive card, when combined with just instants and sorceries, will draw you a bajillion cards, and it looks super ugly and has weird crystal dagger hands. We can also support this strategy with other cards that support spells. Snapcaster Mage, Archaeomancer will get us these spells back, and honestly there's going to be a lot of spells in this deck because it's blue, and we need to interact, we need to be clever, we need to be cute. So this is honestly the baseline strategy. We have evasion on our commander, and we have a bunch of creatures that interact super well with that evasion. And now I want to talk about a few unorthodox strategies. Some angles you can go down, some rogue builds that you might want to explore. First up, we have a little bit of a dip into artifacts. I think what really drives me in this direction is Sharding Sphinx. 4 blue for a 4/4 flying Sphinx, and whenever an artifact creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may put a 1/1 blue Thopter artifact creature token with flying onto the battlefield. So Sharding Sphinx just poops out little Thopters. I think it's great. And there's other cards that do this really well too. Hangerback Walker, Thopter Spy Network. There are even little 1/1 servos running around. Oh, they're so cute. Okay, so what if you like artifacts, but you don't like cute little servo artifacts? What if you'd prefer Infect? Phyrexian Digester, just a great name. 3 mana for a 2/1 Infect. With our commander, unblockable. Necropede, just a little 1/1 Infect, again, unblockable. Ichorclaw Mur, again, a little infecting unblockable dude. Now, do we have a critical mass of Infect, guys? Can we actually go Infect? Let me introduce a few more to you. How about Blighted Agent or Plague Mur? Plague Mur, one of my favorite mana dorks out there. We might not have quite enough density to have all of the Infect we need, but let me present to you a few other cards that could maybe convince you to run a little bit of Infect. How about Skyship Plunderer, where you can pseudo-proliferate your opponent's poison counter, or Thrumming Bird. Both of these also super unblockable, and they tie right into this damage to a player trigger that we love in this deck. But I think one of the best has to be Viral Drake. It's a 1/4, and it has Infect. It has a Proliferate activated ability on it. It's so amazing. Artifacts, Infect, what other strategies could I present to you? Let's talk about Raven Guildmaster. Whenever Raven Guildmaster deals combat damage to a player, that player removes the top 10 cards of his or her library from the game. That's right, can we make Tetsuko Umezawa mill? Spoiler, probably not, but I'm gonna try, okay? How about Rootwater Thief? This is actually a great card just in your deck in general. Rootwater Thief is just a stupid little merfolk, but when it deals combat damage to a player, you can pay 2. And if you do, you can just search through their deck and just exile one of their cards. It could be their win condition, it could be a combo piece, it could be anything, and you're just like, pff, gone. Okay. We can also look at cards like Scalpelexis, a 1/5 flyer, and whenever Scalpelexis deals combat damage to a player, that player removes the top 4 cards of his or her library from the game. And if 2 or more of these have the same name, you repeat the process. I know they're not likely to have the same name, it's probably going to be a basic land. I mean, unless your friend in your playgroup just built a rat colony deck and is super excited about it, and then you play Scalpelexis and then exiled their entire deck in one hit. Oh, don't do that, that's super mean. Rat Colony's a fun card. Alright. But just like these other unorthodox strategies, this doesn't have a ton of support. Balshan Beguiler is an interesting kind of mill. When it deals combat damage, you get to look at the top 2 cards, you put one in the graveyard and the other one back. Kind of a weird mill Fate Seal thing, and it could really mess up your opponent's draws. Ambassador Laquatus and Riddle Keeper can help with this mill strategy, and they just happen to have 1 power. I don't think that they're particularly strong in this area. But one card that is terrifyingly good is Startled Awake. You mill the top 13, you get it back, and then your attacking Persistent Nightmare will be evasive, even though it has Skulk, a form of evasion anyways. I know, if this is the best I've got, the strategy's a little bit thin until I reveal to you Trepanation Blade. 3 mana for an equipment, and whenever equipped creature attacks, the defending player reveals cards from the top of their library until they get a land, and the creature gets +1/+0 for each card revealed this way. That player puts all those cards into their graveyard. It's power, it's mill, it fits everything that we want to be doing. So that has been my Tetsuko Umezawa Fugitive Commander deck tech. It's about being evasive, it's about playing with rogues and going deep down into weird strategy, maybe infecting your opponents out, certainly drawing a lot of cards and getting value whenever you connect with their face. I want to thank you for watching. Why did I include that art? It's so creepy. Okay, thank you, patrons. I'm gonna go on to the next slide and do that. Is also creepy. Man, this infect cards are okay. Thank you, everyone, not just patrons, but all of you for watching this. Another super creepy art. What is going on with the? Okay, moving. There we go. There we go. Thank you, everyone, so much. I hope you liked the video. Talk to me in the comments below. Talk to me on Twitter. Become a patron and talk to me on Discord. All right, everyone. I'll see you really soon. Bye.